So, Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this morning, albeit it's cold. Pray that you keep those warm who don't have heater. Oh Lord, I pray that you would help us to learn what you have for us today. And thank you for Tricia for working so hard to bring it. Pray that you would be with those who aren't with us. I pray that you would heal Pauline quickly and well. And I pray that Mary Elizabeth would have a restful week off. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Good prayer.
Okay, so
This was hard.
Agreed.
Yeah. I'm so glad Mary Elizabeth has come this week and not on an easier week, right? But I did learn a lot. So, so anyway, this section is Matthew chapter 5, verses 17 through 48, which is part of the Sermon on the Mount. And it addresses Jesus' relationship to the law and the prophets and how he came to, and the nature of righteousness. Right. So does somebody want to read the first few verses, 17 through 20?
I will. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven.
So, the Hebrew Bible contains 10 commandments, and the broad principles, and the scribes didn't like broad principles. They wanted to know exactly what to do. So if it wasn't explicitly implied, they figured it was it must be implied. So they came up with rules and regulations to fill in. Like, for example, if the Sabbath must be kept holy and no work, you're not supposed to work. So they had this great debate about what was the nature of work and what should be considered work that you can't do on the Sabbath. And just a few examples are carrying your child would be considered work. Writing was work, and healing, unless it was to save a life, was work. And Jesus routinely broke these rules and regulations. The Pharisees didn't like that. So, it was thousands of rules, because this is for all the commandments, all the laws they came up with, and they're still coming up with, because in the modern day, the nature of work changes on the Sabbath. Orthodox Jews don't drive, I think, right? Yeah, don't drive. Like Christians. Yeah, they have to live close to the synagogue to walk to it.
Right.
Yeah, so they keep coming up with new ones. But Jesus didn't. This is not what Jesus meant by fulfilling the law. And so he came to fulfill the law by bringing out the true meaning of the law, principles, righteousness. Anyway, so we've gone over this many times, but what is righteousness?
I did a lot of research on this. This was hard. So these are not necessarily my words, but some of them are. And
Right, yeah.
I thought this was good. It says it means being in right standing with God, characterized by what is right and just according to his perfect justice for others. But true human righteousness isn't achievable alone. It is a gift of faith. Faith in Jesus Christ, empowering and reflecting his perfect character, which humans strive for through his grace and not self-effort. And that was helpful to me, because I thought, I couldn't, I'm glad I'm not Jewish, because they literally have hundreds of rules you have to follow.
Right.
I couldn't do it.
Well, most Jews don't follow.
It just still,
Yeah.
that would be a real challenge for me, because I try.
Yes, but we have it harder. We're supposed to love our enemies.
Yeah, that That is
That's hard.
also-
I'm having enough trouble trying to love my family right now, so.
Yeah, you have to exceed that of the
Pharisees.
And then he goes on and gives a bunch of examples.
Examples, yeah, a bunch of examples of why.
Yeah.
So, what does it mean that Jesus came to fulfill the law and the prophets rather than to abolish them? It's, following the law is not just an external issue. It's not just what you do outside. You have to have your, like Cedric said last week, which I love too, like Mary Elizabeth, the heart posture. It has to be right. Everything has to be aligned. Your actions and your thoughts need to be aligned. You can't say so I didn't commit murder. That's great. But I mean, if you just feel this hatred in your heart for the person, what's the difference? I mean, it's the same to God.
And he encouraged us to think harder about them, about these rules.
Right.
And by saying, if you think it's as bad as doing it, it's like you have to start from within.
Right. Exactly. And the Pharisees weren't weren't doing that. They were just outwardly. It was appearances with them, right? So that's what Jesus means by saying, unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. So he was saying that the Pharisees aren't going to enter the kingdom of heaven unless they change their hearts and their attitudes, not just what they did.
Again, this is something I read and I thought this was really good. They say that Jesus brought the Old Testament scriptures to their intended completion by perfectly obeying them.
Mhm.
I thought,
That's good. Yeah.
yeah, that is good.
And so what is the purpose of the law according to Jesus?
The purpose of the law is to establish societal standards, maintain order, resolve disputes, and protect rights over acting as a framework for acceptable behavior, ensuring justice, safeguarding individuals from harm by others or the government.
But I mean, according to Jesus, the purpose of the law is to make you know that you have sinned. And love and respect for God and reverence for God and respect for our fellow human beings. That's what he was saying the law is. That's what he came to fulfill. And that can't ever pass away because it's the foundation of man's relationship with God and his fellow man.
Yeah, and he doesn't say it in so many words, but it's the point.
Yeah, that is the point of all of this. And it's got, there's 6 examples and there's a lot in it, but they all come down to kind of the same thing. Need to be righteous, and you can't be the perfect, what did it say? And well, at the end, you have God's perfection. You strive for that, and you can only do that through Jesus with his help.
I heard a sermon one time, this made me think of, in which the preacher said, what if of the 10 Commandments, what if there was one that we all obeyed? Just one. How different our world would be as far as just the cohesiveness of us getting along and what if there never was any stealing?
Right.
If nobody ever stole anything in all the time, how different our world would be. And I thought that was such a thought-provoking thing. You can take any of them if you just took one, and we all did not do that.
Right.
So yeah, it is, as Bill said, to keep us, what a wonderful world it would be if we could do those things.
Yeah.
But we can't.
That's what Jesus did.
Yes.
So, and then we have Jesus is teaching about anger, which is verses 21 through 26.
I've got it. You have heard that it was said to those of ancient times, you shall not murder, and whoever murders should be liable to judgment. But I say to you that if you are angry with a brother or sister, you will be liable to judgment. And if you insult a brother or sister, you will be liable to the council. And if you say, you fool, you will be liable to the hell of fire. So when you are offering your gift at the altar, if you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there and go before the altar. Go first and be reconciled to your brother or sister, and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are on your way to court with him, or your accuser may hand you over to the judge, the guard, and you will be thrown into prison. Truly, I tell you, you will never get out until you have paid the last penny.
All right, so before we get into the questions, but when Jesus says you have heard it said, and then he states the law, he's telling what the Pharisees are saying to do, right? And then when he says, but I say to you, my Bible's different, that's what he wants you to do, the following things. So how is the righteousness that Jesus wants applied to the sixth commandment, which is to avoid not murder?
It goes beyond the physical act. It's kind of what's in your heart.
Right.
And how you feel about it, because my mother used to say, you know, as you thinketh in your heart, so do you.
Mhm.
And I think there's something to that. You know, it's more that I've read, it said that the internal attitudes of the heart, like condemning anger, hatred, contempt, and demanding love and respect for life. Actually, what we need is reconciliation with others, kind of like what you're saying. We can just, you know, pull together and truly love each other, both our friends and our enemies. What a different place this would be. I think it's going to be like that in heaven, though.
Yes, I
I really
will.
think it's.
I think so too, yeah.
Well, and tapping down the anger would prevent so many things.
Right. But it's Jesus isn't talking about just just getting angry with somebody and then it's that festering where you don't
Right.
let it go, where you just hold on to it, become bitter, and because that can cause all kinds of problems. And you can't be right with God without letting go of it. I mean, just getting past that and overcoming that, because it causes spiritual damage. It does. So, and we can't develop a spirit that pleases God. We hold on to anger against another person or a situation.
One of the readings I saw was talking about anger in particular. It shifts from the eternal compliance to the internal transformation within us. And it goes on to say that a harsh word or grudge is as serious as murder in God's eyes, because it stems from the same destructive. And when you hold it inside, it's hurting yourself.
Hurting yourself, but it can spill out, because when you let your emotions take control of you, then you don't have any control. I mean, you're out of control, and you might act on those emotions.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So I think we covered that question then. That Jesus is teaching on anger redefines the command against murder. So why does Jesus prioritize reconciliation with others over presenting over sacrificing to God?
I think it's a step for righteousness.
Yeah.
In order to maintain a level of righteousness, you have to be selfless and let go of all these emotions carry on the way. Because you could overtly show that you are righteous for people to see, but it's not the line.
Right, yeah, the sacrificing doesn't change what's in your heart. You have to change your heart. You have to, before you sacrifice, you need to confess your sin and repent, and then reconcile with the person you had a problem with before you.
That's a better gift to God.
Right, yes, he
Anyway,
requires
to these
mercy,
days.
not sacrifice.
It's better than a burnt offering.
Right. Yes, exactly.
I think that when you have a right relationship with others, it improves your relationship with God.
Yeah, but, yeah,
Yeah,
but you can't have a complete relationship with God unless you are, and your other relationships are right. So you need to do that, and Jesus feels that there's an urgency to resolving the conflicts, and why? Because they do affect our relationship with God. So we need to reconcile as soon as possible. Because we can't be right with God if we're not right with Him, if we don't have a right relationship. And I'm just going to say a little historical context with the paying the debt. So, and in Jesus's day, and even I guess, Charles Dickens' time, whatever, if you couldn't pay a debt, you're thrown in prison. And until you paid the debt, and unless somebody paid it for you, you're going to die in prison. So that was, it was practical advice of the day to stay out of court and everything. But it's still practical advice to resolve our differences before we end up in court or worse could happen. So this one, the next one that Jesus teaches about lust, I really couldn't get much out of it. So I hope you have things to say. So first, somebody want to read verses 27 through 30?
I'll read it. You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and throw it away. It is better that you lose one of your members than that your whole body be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better that you lose one of your members than that your whole body go into hell.
So how is the higher righteousness applied to this commandment?
I think it's like all sin starts in your heart. That's what it's all about, your heart.
Right.
Your intent, right? The whole heart posture.
Right.
So he's saying that if you are thinking it and dwelling on it, then you might as well be doing it because
Right.
it's still wrong.
Yeah.
Although, don't do it.
Sounds good. Yeah.
I recall many years ago, a preacher, and I don't remember which preacher it was, but they were talking about this topic. And they were saying that, like lusting after a person is dehumanizing them. You're turning them, instead of one of God's creations, you're turning them into a thing.
Right. You're
You wish to
objectifying. Yeah.
use for your own pleasure or whatever.
Right.
And that's the sin of it. Is
Yes.
they're not a thing, they're God's child.
Right, because
God's creation.
Jesus isn't talking about the healthy attractions between a man and a woman, because that's normal and natural. It's when you start objectifying a person, looking on them, that they're not human, because we're all made in the image of God, and that's what. And so anything that causes you to sin, not just something that causes you to lust, but anything that causes you to sin, you need to completely remove out of your life, whatever it is. And it could be something good, but you've just gone overboard with it, right?
That makes sense.
Yeah. And to neglecting other things in place of something. But because he does not mean plug your eye out, literally. Pretty sure we all know that. But I think it might have been hard for some people to figure that out. Any more on that section? So, So on divorce, you have heard the law that says a man can divorce his wife by merely giving her a written notice of divorce. But I say that a man who divorces his wife, unless she has been unfaithful, causes her to commit adultery, and anyone who marries a divorced woman also commits adultery. And this, the law that Jesus is talking about is Deuteronomy 24, verses 1-4. And it states, suppose a man marries a woman, but she does not please him. Having discovered something wrong with her, he writes a document of divorce, hands it to her, and sends her away from his house. When she leaves his house, she is free to marry another man. But if the second husband also turns against her, writes a document of divorce, hands it to her, and sends her away, or if he dies, the first husband may not marry her again, for she has been defiled. That would be detestable to the Lord. So in Jesus's day, there were 2 rabbinic schools of thought about, and divorce was a really hot topic among them because this law seems, it's implied, but one school of thought, Rabbi Shammai, was very strict, and they thought only in cases of adultery, should there be divorce. But Rabbi Hillel viewed this law more broadly, and it's like for any reason a man could put aside his wife. I mean, even if he didn't like what she cooked for dinner, he could divorce her. And if he wanted to trade her in a newer, younger model, he could divorce her. So that's not God's intention of marriage. It was for permanence and sanctity of marriage. And if this again, it kind of goes with the lust thing. You're objectifying a woman if you just say, I can divorce you for any reason, because only men can divorce. So what does Jesus say about easily obtained divorces? I mean,
Obviously,
yeah.
people need to take marriage more seriously. It's just, well, we're done.
Yeah.
And I guess, in his day, it was the one that suffered more
Yeah, they definitely suffer.
divorce.
Yeah.
So,
And it was the man's fault that they suffered. So, men weren't treating women as being made in the image of God. They weren't having respect or for them or the dignity of women. So Jesus protects and elevates the dignity of women as being made in the image of God as well. To Jesus, the marriage covenant is designed to create interdependence and mutual respect so that both man and woman reflect the image of God.
I read that they were talking about like an any cause divorce,
Right.
like the cooking supper, whatever.
Yeah,
That they felt that it was due to hardness of heart on the part of the husband.
Yeah.
And that was, well, we know how it affected the Pharaoh, so that's not a good thing.
right.
I never really thought about it like that.
It probably, yeah, it wasn't good for the man either to be doing this because it is hardness of heart, and he's not following God's law either. So he wouldn't be righteous or right with God.
One other thing that I read, and again, I hadn't really thought of this, they were talking about the sacred permanent bond of marriage, and he emphasized that as one flesh, and that would discourage divorce, and that Jesus had indicated to his disciples that perhaps not marrying might be better if divorce was too easy.
Right. Yeah,
I think that it was something Paul never married.
I'll never.
And I always thought that was interesting. That
That we know of.
that's true.
He probably did because we never heard about his wife being with him, and that would be really hard. To be honest.
Also, I've always been so curious about what was his story in the flesh. I have a lot of ideas, but that's another topic.
Yeah, it is.
did not have a wife.
Yeah. So the righteousness, anyway, invites us to honor the image of God in every person we meet. And that's part of what Jesus came to fulfill, the law and the prophets, that we honor each other because we're all made in the image of God. And so anything else about that? So Would someone like to read verses about vows, verses 33 through 37?
I'll read it. Again, you have heard that it was said to the men of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn. But I say to you, do not swear at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. Let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil.
So what does Jesus say about swearing?
Don't do it.
Just do what you say you're going to do, right? I mean, because the law is Exodus 20, verse 7, you shall not take the name of the Lord in vain, for the Lord will not hold you guiltless who takes his name in vain. And we all think that means don't cuss, right? Don't say, but it is actually about swearing oaths. Don't say, I will do something, so help me God. Because if you don't do it, you're sworn falsely in the name of God. And Jesus said that God is a partner in this oath taking, whether you say his name or not, whether you swear by anything or not, because they're all made in the presence of God. All your oaths are made in the presence of God. God is there. God is in everything. So you do not need to use, it's pretty obvious. If you are a person of your word, you don't need to say that. Of course,
How interesting that we swear on a Bible
I know.
before you testify
right.
or a law.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. But we do that. But
Maybe we haven't read
Yeah.
it.
yeah, it's the thing. And yeah, some people,
I do often think about that. And if when people
Yeah.
just
The
say,
president taking an
you
oath.
promise to tell the truth. You
right.
should be able to say.
So help me God. Yeah. Yeah. So we have to do that because it's the law, it's, part of what we have to do. But when we're just telling somebody, promise I'll do this, so help me God, we don't need to. Because if you are righteous, all you need is to say yes or no, like Jesus said. This one is,
I think that maybe a deeper message there is kind of that old adage, you're nothing if you don't have your word.
right.
you know?
Yeah.
One of the things I read, I thought this was pretty good. He forbids swearing by heaven, earth, Jerusalem, or even one's own head, emphasizing that such oaths are misuse of God's authority or claim control over things that humans can't manage. I get that part. Urging people to simply be truthful,
Right.
hence the yes or the no.
Right. Just,
And that's it.
I'll do it or no, I won't do it. And I'll look through.
But you brought up that about the swearing of oath. Has any president that you know of ever taken the oath on a book other than the Bible? Like the Quran or anything
Not the
like that?
precedent, but this Mondani guy.
Mondani, and
with
A couple of
Quran.
Congress,
Yeah.
a couple of people in Congress, Keith Ellison was the first one who swore on the Quran in Congress. And then a couple of other people
Okay, that's
swore on the
interesting.
Quran. Okay, so I didn't have any questions for this next section about revenge, but I sure we can. Section, but so Jesus said, you have heard the law that says the punishments must match the injury, eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say, do not resist an evil person. If someone slaps you on the right cheek, offer the other cheek also. If you are sued in court and your shirt is taken from you, give your coat too. If a soldier demands that you carry his gear for a mile, carry it 2 miles. Give to those who ask and don't turn away from those who want to borrow. So Jesus is saying it's not enough to seek justice for ourselves, but we must show mercy and love to others because it's the only way we can be righteous. And anyway, that eye for an eye, people will take that passage in the Bible and say it's bloodthirsty. This is why the Old Testament is bloodthirsty, savage, and merciless because we have an eye. But in the historical context, it's quite different. I mean, if you take it in context, it was in the Code of Hammurabi. It was called the Lex Talionis, and it was the law of tit for tat. And it's actually, and then it was in the Hebrew Bible. So it's actually the beginning of mercy because its aim was to limit vengeance.
Right.
Right.
It was a
Limiting because in tribal societies like then in the Middle East and also now, blood feuds are just very common. So if one person was injured by another tribe, then his tribe would go to war against that tribe, and there'd be death and bloodshed and everything all over. But this said that only the person that committed the injury was liable, and the punishment must fit the crime. So, that's the eye for an eye, tooth for tooth. But in the Hebrew Bible also, this was just a guide. They didn't cut off your arm if you did. They assessed monetary value for the injuries.
Responsibility.
Right, yeah.
So that if
Yeah.
you injure the carpenter, setting a carpenter could no longer do the duties, that your responsibility was to support that family.
Right, exactly. Yeah, they had five counts that they were liable for. And one of them was loss of time. If you couldn't work, then you get money, and how much your pain and suffering was worth, and then the indignity as well. We did that, pain and suffering loss. So, yeah, but Jesus still even said that didn't go far enough. Even retaliation that was controlled by courts and restricted was not enough for you. You had to respond with grace and generosity rather than vengeance if somebody harmed you. And, so.
I'm glad you gave us the historical part.
Mhm.
That's very helpful.
Right, yeah, because it sounds horrible, but it's not. It's actually better than it was. It limits escalation of violence, but it didn't create peace, and that was what Jesus wanted was peace between parties. So, and then also, in Jesus's day or under the Romans, people were compelled to carry Roman gear 1 mile. Jesus said carry it 2. But that's not what the Jews wanted to hear at all. I mean, this was a hurtful thing for him to say because they wanted their Messiah was supposed to be a military leader, right? So they were not expecting to hear turn the other cheek and do more for your enemy than what they tell you to do. But Jesus was different, and he wanted a radical, different response to this. Jews wanted vengeance against the Romans. They wanted to vanquish them, and they thought the Messiah was going to do it, but that's not what he came for. He told people to give up their rights freely rather than demand more. Yeah. It starts getting harder, yeah, because it's the showing justice and mercy and generosity to others is what the kingdom of heaven looks like. It's what he's trying to get us to be more like. Any comments, Kathy?
I guess I'm sitting here sort of looking at this last one for what to do about our enemies. I'm ready to get to that.
Oh.
That is such a.
Sorry. It's hard. I don't know. Right now, I'm feeling like my family. It may be easier to love my enemy than one of my loved ones. Anyway. So. Okay, so you're ready to move on? Do you want to read that one then? Kathy, the
I would be glad to.
43 through 48?
Yes. You have heard it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of our Father in heaven. For he makes the sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet only your brothers and sisters, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. I appreciate what you said about family. They're in the political arena, are folks I'm really having a hard time with. And I'm still trying to pray for them and that that the Lord will soften their heart. And those around them will give them good counsel and stuff. But that is really hard. I was having a discussion with my husband about that last night, and because some of our leaders are just, it doesn't seem to me that truth and righteousness is a part of who they are, but then it's not up to me to judge. It's so hard to deal. I have such a hard time with unfairness. I grew up in a fairly turbulent home, and it just, unfairness just sticks in my craw so badly. And I just really struggle with that. And so this is hard. This was a hard lesson. I mean, it's why I just pulled out the computer and started researching about things. But it also, the good thing about it has given me a point of reference about things I need to pray for.
Yeah.
So, and boy, did God and I have a chat yesterday as I was finishing this up.
It seems that Jesus is alluding to the fact that if you allow this emotions to overtake you, you're falling to the devil's sin. And therefore, you're moving away from him as a result of acting out on this evil thoughts, because they're evil thoughts. So your enemy may be evil themselves, but that doesn't mean that you need to be equally evil.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I thought too about Jesus was literally hanging on the cross.
Yeah.
He never,
Never.
the only emotion he showed was with my God, why have you forsaken me? And because the Lord could not look at sin.
Right.
And so we had to
Turn away.
turn away from that. But even Jesus in death, a horrible death, did not condemn the people that were doing this to him, or it's a really tough thing. It's tough. I was hoping you might have some pearls of wisdom for us.
I'm struggling with this too. I'm struggling with the problem of not thinking bad things about somebody in my family too. So
It's hard because I don't want to be at odds with anybody. I mean, in the heart of hearts, I genuinely don't. I mean, if when I was in the workaday world, I'm so thankful I had as few problems as I did, with parents or with kids and things like that. And usually, we could come, let us reason together was my attitude about it, help me help your kid and all. And I really didn't have very many problems. And I'm thankful for that. But it is, I guess, it just, I suppose that's just something as we as human creatures, we just have to deal with. And it's not something I can, I got that resolved. I think that's going to be an ongoing.
it's an ongoing thing. Yeah, I think we're going to be,
Which
because
wasn't, but I think it's going to be.
it's the way, because the whole thing is the process. yeah, so.
What is that? But it's, and the word enemy can be interpreted as many things, from a different tribe, from a different thought process, different gender, anything.
Yeah.
So what is it?
It's interesting, God has or Jesus said a parable about who's your neighbor, but he never defined your enemy.
Right.
Guess it thought that was self-explanatory. But it can be anybody, like anybody, I just don't like anybody.
Yeah.
Or
That's
Yeah, who is your enemy?
why is it your enemy? Or struggle
Right.
to
Now,
be righteous.
then it was, back then it was probably Romans, it was probably very obvious, but now it's more of a.
Yeah.
Who is?
But before that, it was Babylonians.
That's it,
Before that,
right.
it was Philistines.
That's it.
So it's always
There's always somebody,
Yeah.
there's always somebody in, and then maybe our enemy could not be taken so much literally as enemy, but somebody that we just don't know or understand.
Disagree.
And how much of that is ego?
You know, it was interesting when you asked that question, because I've never considered that. You know, who is my enemy? You know, I'd like to think I don't have any, but I'm sure I probably do. I think we all probably do. But the only thing that I think when Jesus was referring to dealing with a difficult person, his answer in that situation that's coming to my mind is he says, well, you know, talk to them, try to come to a common ground and resolve the issue. I think that's actually right in this series that we're talking about here in Matthew.
Yes. And pray for them also.
Yeah, I do try to, you know, I mean, I'm praying for a whole lot of people in Washington, but,
Well, we're supposed to pray for our leaders anyway, so.
yes, we are, but it's, you know, I just have to, so often I have, Lord, I need to defer to you on this one, because I'm not sure what to ask you.
But yes, I've been spending a lot of time praying for my family members that I'm having problems with. And for me, the more I pray, it's like it becomes me too, because it's like, well, you're not perfect either. You think you're judging her and you're saying, yeah, she's stupid. She does, you know, you're thinking all these things, and it's like you're not.
It does just keep coming, it's cyclic.
Right. Yeah. You're not helping the situation by thinking these thoughts. And, you know, Jesus said, don't have those thoughts. Don't let them fester. So,
I guess the message is, he was very clear, love each other.
love each other. Right.
So
And-
love each other.
Right.
None of
But
those
the
things
only,
clear.
right. The only way we can do that though is with, through Jesus. Right. We can't, we, you know, our, to be perfect and as God is perfect, it's a process, and we have to we can only do it through Jesus. Yeah, Jesus challenges us not just to love our family and friends, but to get out of our comfort zone and to show love to our enemies or people, our strangers, I think, people we don't know, you know.
But isn't it easier sometimes to love straight?
That's what I was thinking. I'm thinking exactly. Exactly. It can be, yeah. So, they don't have the baggage. We don't know any, you know, just, yeah. But, so God's faithful, generous love Jesus holds that up to us as a model of what we're supposed to be like. And, so the Sermon on the Mount calls us to be peacemakers and mend broken relationships at all levels, and therefore it mends the world and helps usher in the kingdom of heaven. Does that sound? Yeah. Wow. So it's,
six, I'm sorry.
Okay. so we're supposed to mend our broken relationships, and therefore that helps mend the world, and it will usher in the kingdom of heaven. So it's kind of revolutionary. It's revolutionary, radical, and not the way the world works. So, but our righteousness must come from God and what he does in us, because we can't do it ourselves. It must be God-centered, not self-centered. We need to be a servant and think of others before we think of ourselves. And it's not about our glory, but God's glory. And a reverence for God and not approval from people. And we have to go beyond keeping the law to living the principles behind the law. And that's what Jesus meant by fulfilling the law. So when Jesus says, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you, he is demonstrating a love like God's, and we're called to do the same, basically. He's asking. That's all he's asking us to do. It's not hard.
I love the fact that you took this on. I think you did a marvelous job.
Thank you.
That's the next thing.
Like I said, when I saw this, I was like, this is so hard.